Let me give you a warm welcome to another episode of Man to Man with Life Stories Worldwide. Today we have three brothers ready to tackle some tough questions. We have Stephen Turnbull, who's returning from the last time he joined us on Man to Man. We have two first-timers. We have Bill Keefe, all the way from the USA, joining us. And we have Nathan Weaver, all the way from Loughborough at the moment, I believe, joining us. But he's a pastor in Sunderland, and it's great to have you guys. Wonderful to be with you. Let me just start off by giving you the subject today. Today we're talking about something not a lot of men kind of deal with too well, and that is failure. But before we do, let me just ask this question, and I'll ask Nathan to start us off, if that's all right. Nathan, what is the difference between the world's idea of success and God's idea of success?
I think it's a great topic, great question. I think we measure things, don't we, in an interesting way. Certainly, as pastors, as men in ministry, it's always defined around sort of numbers and what's your offerings and all that sort of thing. And I think, to be honest, we've got to get past that. You know, world success is all about dog eat dog. Anybody that I can put down to trample to get to the top, I've got to be the best. I've got to be the one that's the top dog. I've got to be. God's success is different from that. You know, God's success. In fact, the Word of God says the last will be first. And success is an interesting one because I think it depends how you are driven. I learned a long time ago that even if I fail in an area, I've not really failed. I've got something that I can learn on, or I can get better, I can be sharper on. So to answer the question maybe briefly, I would say the world's view is whatever it takes, I'm going to get to the top. Doesn't matter who I trample on. Doesn't matter if there's integrity there. And I'm not saying people from the world don't have any integrity. I believe people from the world have integrity, but there's a different value system of, you know, it's a bit more like dog eat dog. If you've got the most money, if you've got the best car, if you've got the best business, you're successful. God works totally different from that. He flips it on its head. He said, you know, if you are going to be the last one, you will be the first one. Your success is measured in who you are in me, in my identity, and not measured in who you are in your identity. I think we get caught up in that. If I'm successful, I'm the man. I've made it. And God says, no, your success is made in me. I make you successful. I give you your identity. I'm the one that makes you flourish. And when you understand that our identity is in Christ, that he's the one that makes us successful, we look at it differently from a worldview. It's not about win-win. It's about or win-lose. It's about everybody winning, everybody enjoying in this process that it's a success and it's all working together. That's in short. Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yeah, it does, and that's great. Bill Keefe, have you got anything to add on to that, on the idea of God's success and the world's success?
Well, you know, I think before I was walking with Christ, a lot of what Nathan shared was a big part of my life. When I was wild and crazy to achieve a position that seemed to be successful, I was taught by other men to lie, cheat, and steal to get to the top. There were some men that were very successful, fortunately, that they inherited their success from family, or maybe they had a great opportunity and they moved forward. But in the world's perspective, and again, not having any Christian counsel in my life, I was doing it the wrong way. I was doing it a way to attain, again, things that I felt were important. And so then when I met some Christian businessmen, they began to influence me to trust in God. That as a man of not many things, but having a relationship with a God who owned the world, who created the world, and to develop a relationship with him that I could be a joint heir in his success and in the beautiful things that he has. So it was a total paradigm shift in my mindset. So I think Nathan really covered it very well, but that's how it played out in my life as a young man. And I hope that I can do the same in sharing that with others to help them.
It's incredible. It's really good. Stephen, let me come to you with my second question then. Can you share a time where you had to deal with failure, and how well did you kind of take the failure?
Yeah. I can tell you about a time that I started a property business, and it was very successful. Within 2 years, I took that property business to a £3 million turnover, and I won national industry awards. In fact, in 2008, out of the 10,000 houses that were built in Scotland, one of the houses that I built was officially awarded Scotland's House of the Year. So it was a very successful company. It was great, but it failed financially because of the economic recession, and how the property values changed overnight when the recession hit in 2008. So it's interesting. You define failure. It's an important question. So we're talking about one company here that, from one perspective, was a tremendous success. That it actually got to the top of its industry by building the best house. It couldn't have done any better than that, but financially it failed. Now, for me, it hit me personally because it was my company, and although I hadn't done anything wrong, I lost every penny that I had. So that for me, I saw that as a big failure, because it had such a negative impact on my life. But it was a big learning curve. Biggest learning curve in my life by far. And now I can look back and I can see how I've changed from then. And I can see actually it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Didn't feel like it at the time, Keith. Did not feel like that at all at the time. I felt like the worst thing ever that could have happened. And up until that point in my life, everything had been success. I had success upon success. I was only 35 at the time. So it really hit me in a big way, and I can understand how people are impacted by failure or perceived failure. And I'm really looking forward to getting into that a little bit more a little bit later. But yeah, it had a big impact on me. I thought my life was coming to an end. That's how big it felt at the time. But now I can look back and say, learned so much from it, changed so much from it, and it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me.
And were you a Christian at the time, Stephen, when this happened?
Yes, I was.
So let me just tag on to my next question, and then I'll go to the others to answer this as well. So as a Christian, is it hard to accept that God allowed that failure, and why does God allow failure, do you think?
Yeah, I really struggled with it at the time, because my concept of Christianity at the time was the prosperity gospel. Reason for that was that I came to faith when I was 15, and I just had success after success after success. My life got better and better and better, and I thought that's what happens. You give your life to God, and then everything just gets, you just go up another level and up another level and up another level. And so I found it very confusing. And I thought, God, how come you didn't have my back? How come you didn't protect me from this financial doom that's came into my life? The thing is, when we think of our plan for our life, our hopes, our ambitions, that doesn't always line up with God's plan for our life. His plan is eternal, and it's beyond what we can see or even perceive or imagine. and it's so much better for us because it has eternal significance. And so I have learned since then, and this was part of the learning process for me through this big failure when I was completely emptied by losing every penny that I had and questioning everything in my life. I realised from that, well, the Christian walk is all about the one guarantee that we have, which is an intimate relationship with the King of Kings, with the creator of the universe. And there is nothing better than that.
Yeah.
Take away all the reward, all the finances, all the success. And if all you've got left is Jesus, well, when I was in a position when that's what it felt like. I had nothing but Jesus. And that was a great place to start from.
That's right.
Really, really changed me from that. And I've learned to trust him more and to follow his leading more rather than me running ahead and saying, God, please bless me in what I'm doing because I'm doing it for you. I've learned to wait and get his leading and his prompting. It makes me think, Keith, about the story of Joseph. It's hard to accept that God allows us to fail, but the story of Joseph, maybe his hopes and dreams way back at the start of his story was maybe he wanted to start a clothing line, a clothing business, snazzy, fancy garments for people in Israel and Egypt. That was his plan. But my goodness, he was sold into slavery. He failed to win the love of his brothers and was sold into slavery. And then he failed to keep out of trouble, and he was unjustly put in prison for 13 years. And people would look at that and say, Joseph, your life is a failure. It's an absolute failure. Sold into slavery and now forgotten in prison for over a decade. But that's not the end of the story. And that's what we have to look at in our lives when we think, I've failed, I am failing, I am a failure. Nobody's a failure. And we need to realize that it's not the end of the story. And God took Joseph from that forgotten position and put him into the second most powerful position in the world, which is Prime Minister of Egypt. And that was outstanding success because that was God's plan. We could look at his life at various points and say, that Joseph guy is a failure. He has failed.
Yeah.
And we can conclude that at some points in our own life. But as long as I've got God, it's not the end of the story.
That's right.
Nathan, as a